everyone. Welcome to season 3 of Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at ways to do smart scripting that will let you control PTZ presets in a more intelligent way. So, we're going to dive into that in a moment. But before we get to that, uh, first, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for this new season. Uh, we love engagement. So if you have any questions, if you have any insights or experiences you want to share, please just post them in the comments. Also, we welcome you to join us live on air. So if you are inclined, we'd love to have you here live on the show with us. So please just let us know if you want to do that, and somebody from the studio will get you on air. The link is right here below. Okay, so let me give you a little insight, a little context to what I'm thinking of for this show here. One of the things that I think anybody that's worked with PTZ cameras, especially multiple PTZ cameras in a production, has dealt with is having so many presets and trying to remember which camera and the associated presets are live at any given time, so that you don't accidentally press a button that's going to do a live motion on screen or a live zoom or pull out. So all of those types of things that you tend to deal with when you're in a live production, they can, that can make that less obvious. Oh, gee, I want to go to preset 3 on this camera. It's like, oh, that's live. So what we want to cover here is a way to think about presets differently. And for this model, what I'm actually thinking about is, as opposed to saying I have cameras with fixed presets, what if I came around and said, I actually have targets, people or locations with specific framing that I want to access during a show. And then what I do is I use scripting and some XML files that describe it to say, for this target, this is the camera and preset that I want to use. So we automate the camera and preset part, and we simply ask people to say, which target in the production are you trying to capture with a camera? And so this means that using scripting, we can look and say, okay, what camera is in program, what's live, and if that camera is the shot, the preferred shot that I want for a target, it can go back and say, well, what's our second shot for that target that we may want to use? Pull that out and then put that into preview, ready to switch into production and go live. So this is just a different way to do it, but a way that I think can make it easier for, first, less experienced people who maybe just want to focus on targeting shots, but also for people that are working in productions that are very complex. And it gives you one less thing you might need to worry about. So before I get into any of the tech on this, I just want to jump over to our comment section here and go through and just sort of welcome people. So first, there's Rudy. Rudy, thank you for joining us here for this new season. Definitely appreciate it. We're looking forward to this season as well. So then we have George Best. I believe I'm saying the name correctly, George. I'm sorry if I've forgotten. But so George is joining us from Germany. So also thank you for joining us here for the new season. We have Gary Millward. Gary is from Montreal. Great to see you here, Gary. As always, thank you for coming back for the new season. And we also have John Drinkwater. So John has been a big live streamer, works with Toastmasters over in London. So definitely glad to have John here with us as well. So thank you, everybody. So to get started, I want to jump over to the output from VMix here. And I'm going to talk a bit about what I mean when I talk about targets. So over here on the screen, I have 3 different cameras. Now, these are virtual cameras for this production, so I sort of took a video and carved it all up. But So what I have here are three different shots of this same person from the three different virtual cameras I have set up for them. So we can call this target one. And so these are a set of shots that we have associated with target one. And now for these three cameras, if I go and say, I have another target, target two, and that will be this lady in a blue dress. And you can see it's the same sort of thing, the three different camera shots that I have for the same person. And then the third target that I have is a target which frames these two people together. So if I wanted to do something where they were interacting and speaking. So this gives me these three different targets that I have available. And in each target, I have a set of three shots that can be associated with that target. And so what we're going to do inside of a script is when we want to bring on, when we want to switch to a specific target, what we're going to do is we're going to look and say, is the camera associated with the first shot that I would want to take with that camera? Is that in program? And if it is, then it would go and say, well, what's the second camera and preset? What's the second shot that I have available? And if that's not in program as well, then switch to that. Otherwise, go to a third. We also have it so that if all of this, all of those shots are taken, we have one camera over here, which I'm just going to switch to, which I sort of have as our fallback camera. So this is the camera where if all the preferred shots are taken, I can switch to that. So this could just be a message that will come up and say, no available cameras, so you may want to take another action. But this is simply what will come up in preview. So the way the script works is that it looks what's going on in program and gets you the best shot for the target you want and places that into preview. And that gives you the option then to switch it in. So that's how we're working with that. And the way we describe this information here is we do that using an XML file. So if we switch over to the other screen here. Okay, let's switch to the XML screen here, guys. Okay, there we go. So, so here we have the XML file that we have associated with what I just described with the targets and the different shots inside the target. So if we look at the top, the way I have this set up is how many sets of targets do I have? And in this case, I have three. I have three cameras. So I'm saying those would be the three potential target sets that I have. I identify the cameras with the name of the input inside of VMix. So this says inside of VMix, this will be the input name associated with a particular camera. And one of the things to keep in mind is the way VMix works with PTZ cameras is you would assign a PTZ camera as an input. And then as you create positions and zoom framing on each one of the targets that you want, you can create and save that as a preset. And VMix then creates another input with that index preset. But again, because it's all driven off the same camera, what it's really doing, if I select one of those presets, is it's just moving that camera to that preset image. So it gives you, an easy way to create multiple presets in VMix, and we're going to be leveraging that here in how we do the smart presets. So now that I identified all the cameras, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be identifying the targets. And I have the target sets. I have them broken up here as simple XML. So this is sort of set 1, set 2, and set 3. They're all pretty identical. The difference is that I turn around and say for each shot in set 1, so if I sort of go along here, what I have then is I say this is priority 1. This is the first shot I'd like to take. The camera associated with this shot is camera A. So again, that's that first input that you put in initially. But then the input associated with this specific target shot, where it zooms and pans in, that's input A1. And that's how I have this set up. And for VMix, that's preset one associated with that camera. So I'm just taking the raw data about this. So my first camera shot, if I want to go to target one, is going to be camera A, uh, shot one, preset one. If camera A is in program, my second will be camera C, shot one, and my third will be camera B. So this is basically the model that we're using. And at the very bottom of this XML file here, I turn around and I have, well, what's the input I should go to and put in preview if all of these other inputs, all these other targets are in program already, and I couldn't switch to one of them without making a move. So that gives you a sense of the full XML that we're going to be using here. So before I jump into the code that's going to work on this, let me hop over again to the comments and see who's joined us. So let's see. So we'll start again with John. He just said he's happy to come on and talk about this New Year's challenges after the PTZ show here. So that's definitely something that I would welcome, John. You are definitely bringing a lot of experience from the work you've been doing. So I would love to have a good conversation with you. So let's connect after the show, and we'll try to set something up to get John on with us. So let's see. So George, yes, George base. He said use the baseball hint. Yes, that was it. So it's base. I have to remember that. Thank you, George. So we have Thomas Ratty from Leverkusen. I guess I said that right. Leverkusen, Germany. So Thomas, thank you for joining us. And we have 1080 Live. And he's saying, greeting from the distant land of Connecticut. So forklift upgrading to PTZ soon. Looking forward to this tutorial. So yes, thank you. Thank you, 1080 Live. I appreciate it. So, all right. So what I want to do now is let's jump into the code that we are going to work on this. So the way this is set up is I have three scripts. One for target one for target two, one for target three. They are essentially the same script. It just will, based on what I tell it, it's target one or two or three, it'll be looking at different pieces of the data we read. So let me scroll down and get started here. So you can see right here at the top, this is where we turn around and say, okay, this script is for target set one. So at the beginning, like we always do in scripting, we define everything we're going to need to use through the production. So, we'll be putting this up after the show, so I don't need to go through each thing line by line, but in sort of big buckets here, we set up everything. We sort of group all the things when we define them. So the whole top set of variables is around the target sources, the cameras, and the number of targets we have, all of those things. We have all the things we've set up for the individual shots. And one thing to mention here, because you notice I have like shot key, we're using VMix's keys. That's one way to identify it. You can use name, you can use number, you can use key. Key is sort of a unique GUID, a unique identifier that VMix associates with each input. And so we're using that as a way when we compare and work with everything. That's just, I want to point that out here. But we do have to work with strings and input numbers through this. So we use keys as sort of the main format, and then everything else we work with as needed. So when we go through our targets, all the things for shots, we also have the failover shot, which we mentioned. So we'll know what the name of the input is for that. And then what we have here is just a general XML target node list. And this is, I mentioned that we have the XML file. We read that file that we just looked at into VMix, and this is what we're using to hold all the target information contained in that file. We then have all the stuff for the layer-related variables. Now, remember, I mentioned that we have to check first in program to see what inputs are there. And program can have a base input, but it can also have layers in that. So if you had a multi-box shot where maybe you had 3 or 4 cameras in there, or other types of assets and cameras that you want to display, we not only have to go and read the base input, but we have to look at all the overlay layers that are sitting on top of that to make sure we know exactly what cameras are live at any given time. So we have all that information that we handle in with the layer variables, and then all the camera related information we have here. Uh, and what I have here, if you notice, we have under the program related variables, we have live sources that we have. This is array of 12 because you can have potentially 11 inputs that are live. So we've done that in here just so we can place all the layers that we find in program here, and that's how we go through it. So this is really everything we have set up, and then we start to go into these are the basic variables we're using inside of VMix and some general temp variables that we have available if we need to do anything. So that's sort of all the setup, and you can look at that when you download the file after the show. But we start with collecting now all the information that we've been talking about here and organizing that for use to figure out what shots we can take. So as usual, we start by reading the VMix XML. It's a document, and we load that document into VMix XML. We are also doing the same with this XML file. So if you remember, we talked before, you can read these things as sort of a reference, or you can read XML as a file. So for the VMix, we're reading it as a reference to their XML library. But for the targeting file, we're reading that as a file we wrote on disk. And so what we're doing is we're saying, where is that file going to be set up? What's the directory it's going to be stored in? And then what is the document that we're going to read that file into inside of the Visual Basic Code here? What's the document that we're going to read that? What's the structure we're going to read that document into? And then we actually go and set everything up to do the read. So we set it up, read the target file stream, which is how we grab this, and we go find the file, farm out, open it up and read it, and then we take and load this now into XML targets metadata. So this gives us an easy way now with all the data inside to start working with it in code. So now we have the VMix data, we have the target data. So the first thing we want to do is let's figure out all the cameras that are involved. So that's this piece of code that we're looking at right here. So this is basically saying, read that XML file, find all the nodes that are cameras, which if you remember, we start with targets, then we have a camera section. It's going to read all of those, and we just create a node list. So we have one node list, which has all the cameras inside, and we know the count of that. So that's where we get with the XML camera node list.count. That's just the property of that structure. And so we're taking and storing that so we can loop through it if we need to. We know how many are going to be in it. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing now for the target data. So we are target 1. So if you remember, we said we're doing target set 1, and that's all we're doing here. We append the target set 1. We select multiple single nodes that have shot involved under target 1. So if you thought of the XML structure we had, targets, then target, and then shots. This is exactly what we're doing. We're reading all the targets under target 1, and then we're getting all the shot nodes. And we take the count of that. And in addition, we are also now getting what is the name of the failover input. So if all of these shots are sort of taken, the cameras associated with all the shots are taken, what's the other input we're going to go to? So that's sort of structurally there. So now, because we know the number of shots, the number of cameras, all that information, we are now going to go and define places to put all the keys that are associated with these. So the camera keys, shot keys, and the shot camera keys. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So the camera keys are where all the general cameras are. And then the shot keys are the inputs associated with each specific shot that we're going to have as targets, in a given target, the different shots in priority. And then the shot camera keys are going to say for a given shot, so if I have one of these index shots inside of here, what's the camera associated with it? So in VMix, I mentioned you have a camera input, but then you also have these PTZ preset inputs. Those are the shots that we're looking at. There's no way directly in VMix to turn around and say, this shot is directly associated with this camera input. So we have to figure that out. That's why we store that in the XML file, because that isn't directly, at least as far as I found out. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. I welcome that. Uh, but this is going to now give us, this is every shot and the camera associated with that shot. So when we go through what's in program, we're going to be able to figure out exactly what cameras are in use. So with all of this now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn around and say, I'm trying to get the input keys now for all of these elements. So first we start with the cameras. So we now get the input keys. We loop through the number of cameras there are, which we know, and we go and get the key associated with each one of those. And that's what we then store in that dimmed array up here, camera count, camera keys. So, oh, let me see. So I'm told we have a question here. So, so the XML is better and quicker to change than hard coding the lot. Yeah. So we're using the XML file here because I think it makes it simpler for people that are looking at this as a program to sort of say, let me just describe everything. I don't need to necessarily understand how the code works. And I'm not touching the code, so it's less chance for somebody that's not comfortable with code to break something. But I've just in this XML file, and with a little bit of guidance, it should be pretty straightforward for somebody to make those changes. So it is absolutely easier than hard coding everything. And I recommend that, whether it's VMix scripting or Node.js, which is something we're also going to get to in this season, that you look at putting as much into variables and configurable elements that can be read in versus coding things in solidly here. And so that's sort of a general coding rule. So thank you for asking the question. I'm sorry if I haven't been looking up. So John actually is following up on that. He says, so you could assign different backgrounds for each slot to give the impression of a 3D world. Yes, you could. Say these were, I mean, there's lots of different ways to apply this. This could be green screen that you have set up. So different cameras you may want to change. So as opposed to like doing things where you're changing shots, you could turn around and say, if I change from camera A to camera B, I may want to use a different background behind somebody, or change something that's in a monitor that may be next to that person in the fully composed shot. So really, this as a concept was about targeting, but in practice, as a sort of a technical exercise, it really is just saying I recognize when something is placed in program, and I use what's in program to drive some other decision that I'm making. So in this case, at its foundational level, what we're doing is we're looking in program to decide what we want to put in preview. We could be doing that same thing to decide what input we want to put in different layers in a multi-layer input. So something like that, could definitely be there as well. Okay, so let me jump back into the code here. So as we said, we're filling up all the camera keys here. Then we're doing basically the same thing with the shots inside. So we know what all the camera keys are. Now we know what all the shot keys are. We're doing the same thing. Go at name by name and pull the key values and assign that to that array of shot keys. And because I said we don't have a clean way inside of VMix to pull the map out, we are actually also doing the same thing with the shot camera keys. So it's just simply saying for this particular shot in this target, this is the camera that's associated with this. So now when we're done pulling all this information through, what we've effectively have is 3 arrays. All my cameras, the shots associated with those cameras for the target, and then the cameras associated with each one of those shots. So we have all this set up and ready to go. And so now we have to figure out, well, what is inside of the program? Because that's the next piece of this. We know what we want to do now, and we have all that information laid out. Now we have to see what we can do. So in here, we're going to use a new concept that we haven't, I believe, used in any meaningful way before. And that's the concept of a dictionary. So what a dictionary in VBScript it lets you do is you can set something up as name value pairs. So when I put in one value, the dictionary is going to give me the value that's associated with that in that pair. So if I had A, B, and C, D, when I put in A, it would come back and give me B. When I put in C, it would come back and give me D. So it makes it very easy to sort of keep these arrays of things that I'm going to want to use, because when I'm looking things up inside of what's in program, I want to come back and say, for any given input, what's the camera that's associated with it? Because you remember, the goal here is that I got to make sure that the new target that I have isn't on any of the cameras that are inside a program. So that's where this dictionary comes in. I can look at any shot, find out the camera that's associated with it. So that's what we're setting up here. So I'm going to come in here, and so I set this up as a generic dictionary. So this is a new construct, and this is something you can look up. But this is basically saying I have a string matched with a string, and then I say for the associated camera key, which is how we're going to use. I just initialize that. That's going to be the thing when I give it an input to say what's the camera associated with that. That's going to go in associated camera key. So as I go through this, I have the target sets. And what I'm doing here is I'm pulling in all the targets. And this is basically looking at the shots that are associated, get the count. And then for each target, what I'm doing is I'm saying, what is, let's create a node list of the shots and cameras that are associated with that. And that's what I have right here. For set one, I'm pulling in all these shots. And then what I'm doing once I have this is I'm looping through each of these shots and finding the associated, if you look here, I'm taking what's the associated camera, and I'm using that now to basically set up everything where I have the camera names, and I go and I get the camera keys, which is basically what I'm doing. And now I'm going to do the comparison here. So I'm doing these as key value, as name value pairs, where they're all string. So using the names, I look up the keys associated. So I get each name input of the shots, and I look up the keys associated with it and get those keys in. And then I go in and I assign that. If you look here, I'm going here and getting the value of the shot camera key, and I'm adding these now. For this shot camera key, for this shot key, this is the camera that's associated with it. Now I have the keys, the shot key and the camera key, and I populate that inside the dictionary. And that's what this camera map.add. If you remember, the camera map was the dictionary we set up before. And all I'm doing is saying, now add these. So I know there's a lot of code here that we're going through pretty quickly, but as I pull through all this stuff, that's all we've done. We built this dictionary with the keys for each shot and the camera associated with it. And that's all that this code up here has been doing. And now we're going to start to dive in and look at the specific keys that are inside a program. So we pull in the what input is active, and that's where we get this in here. And I actually wrote that out as a test stuff here. But then based on this, this active input, we're going to assign that to say at live sources. If you remember at the beginning, I said live sources is the array that's going to hold all the keys for everything that's stacked up inside a program. So the main input, the one that you see that's listed in the VMix active, that's the base input. And so we're going to assign that to live sources 0. That's our baseline input. And so we get the key associated with that input. We then go and say, let's create an XML node list of all the overlays. So inside of an input, if I have multiple layers stacked in those inputs, those will be listed as overlays. And so for the live input, I'm pulling out, getting all the overlay nodes. And then I am just walking through these, and I'm getting, basically, I'm taking these overlays and I'm adding the keys associated with each of them into the overlay sources. And so that's everything that's going on here. I know the total number of layers, and I come here and I just pull through and pull the key values out into overlay sources. And we start with 1 and go up to the end. So now in live sources, I have all the keys for everything that's inside of program. Now we just have to make a decision. We have all the information. Now we just have to figure out what we can put in preview for a selected target. And so if we start with this, we're just going to go through all the shots we have again, because we want to start to say, ideally, this is the first shot and then keep going from there. Uh, so I index everything and say, okay, let's loop through all the shots. And on a provisional basis, what I say is, let's take that first shot. We're going to start by assuming that's good, and we'll prove prove otherwise. So up here, we just say, okay, assign that first shot that we have, our preferred shot, as the preview key we're going to use. And now I'm just going to loop through the live sources and see, well, is it there? Can I actually keep it? And we do this now by this loop over here. I do have a little extra code in here, so I apologize for that. So the first thing I'm saying is, if the exact same shot, if that key is one of the keys that's inside of uh, the program list, I can't use it. So we know that's the first thing. So if it matches directly, then let's make the preview key blank again, because this isn't a good shot. So the other thing we can do is, if the shot isn't the same key, but is using the same camera as a shot that's inside. So that's the next thing we're doing. So what I'm doing is, I'm giving that camera key that I have, that shot key, and I'm saying, okay, if the shot key uh, uh, is, you know, is the same as the associated camera, then I have the same thing. This isn't good, because it's not the exact shot, but it's a shot on the same camera I want to use. So again, I have to blank that out. So what's going to happen is, I'm going to go through all of these, and if either of those two conditions, as I loop through all this for each of the shots, then I'm going to know that either it was blank, which means I don't have a something I could put in the preview directly, or it's going to, because it's assigning this name. If you remember at the top, every loop it's coming back and saying, okay, assign this name. And this means that when the shot was taken, this camera was free. It isn't used in program. And what you'll notice is, down here where I do is say, if the exact same shot is in target and program, there's a few other cases I want to make sure we get. Uh, this is one other one. If the exact same shot is in program and the target, I'll actually use that, because that's okay, because I don't have to move the camera. It's the identical shot. So in that case now, I'm good, because it's not the same camera, different shot. It's the same camera, same shot. So I can just put that in. So that means I can use that and put that. And you may want to use this where, say you had a multi-box and then you wanted to do a merge. And you come back and say, okay, so I'll put this in there and then merge. So I zoom into that one gas and then merge back at the end. So there could be reasons you want to use the same shot that's already there. And that is a good shot there. But, outside of that, you basically are saying, either it's unique or it's the exact same shot as a shot that's in there that I can then use in a merge. And that's really, what we got. And then at the end, after I've looped through all of these shots, I come back and say, well, if it isn't blank, that means we have a good shot. So there's something in preview. There's a key in preview that we can use. And so we just exit out of this loop. Uh, Otherwise, if the shot is not good, then we loop back and go for the next one. So again, just we step through and get everything we need through comparisons. And then if we found a good shot, so that's where we start. So if the key is good and we in preview, then we just want to change and say, okay, set this key, set everything up we need for this, and get the name of it. And we are going to use an API function call to put that target into preview. However, if we went through all this and there's nothing, there isn't a match shot, this is where that failover shot that we had. So if you remember, we turned around and also had a fourth camera in there. That was our failover. That shot comes in here now. So we say, well, we didn't have a key, so let's just plug our failover key in there and put that into preview. And that is really the whole logic here. So it starts with loading all the information, reading the file, looking at VMix, then it decomposes that to get a set of keys and organized around shots and cameras associated with the shots. Then we go through, walk through what's in program to see, do we have match, it's the shot we want, on one of the cameras inside of preview already, inside of program already. And if, outside of one exception case, if it is, then we have to find another shot. And if it isn't, after we've gone through all the shots, then we actually go and look at this as, okay, let's just put in our failover shot so we have something there. And that shot could just be a message. It could be something where we sit there and go, hey, it's just an image we put up and say you can't switch, pick another target right now. And that could do that. Or it could just be sort of a real wide angle shot that you may have that you can jump to and then pick another shot to go back into the actual target you wanted. So, all right. So there was a lot there. And I apologize if I'm a bit rusty going over code with all of you. So I'm sure there's more I could do around this. So let me see. Do we have any other comments? Okay. No. So if you'd like, what I basically have, I can jump into VMix for a second and sort of show you how some of this would work here. So I have things set up where I could go through and say, if I wanted to do things like a traditional camera, I could turn around and say, let's switch to camera A. So, and that puts camera A into that. And then I'm going to sort of just push that into the output. So in camera A here, I then have different targets. That's target 1, that's target 2, and that's target 3. So that's the way I set this up. And if you did this traditionally, those would be the 3 presets. But if I came here now, the camera that is associated with this, so if we sort of look at this shot, this is camera A that I'm getting here, and the preset is preset A3. So if I had any other target that preferred camera A as well, it wouldn't be able to take that and would need to go through. So if I go and say, let me actually switch to target 2, you can see that jumped over, and now that's on camera C. So target 2 would be on camera C because it can't use camera A. And I'm pressing target 3 now. So if I did that, so that's taking a wide shot, and that's on camera B. So now I have, these are the shots that I would have available for each one of the targets if this was up here. So, but if I instead say, let me put camera B over here, and we'll set that here. So, okay. Oh, let me jump over here. So now this is camera B that's in here. If I went through the targets again, so if I go for target 1 this time, it now is the same one because that's camera A that uses that. This now goes to the same one. But if I go to target 3, which would normally use here, it's going to be the same input that's in here. So it's actually going to say, no, so we have another target over here that we're going to use. So our preferred target would be A. So now I actually, even though I have this set up, it makes it very simple. I don't have to think of what preset. I'm never going to have this thing move on me. So no matter what I do to switch over, you will always be safe. And that's really the goal. What I'm doing as I'm pressing this is I'm just selecting a target. I'm not selecting a preset. VMix is the one through the script that's selecting the preview, the preset that we want to use for this. So that's everything I wanted to cover. I know we sort of jumped back in here on the deep end with this, and there's a lot in this script, but we will put this up so you'll be able to go through all of it. If you have any questions, we're going to hang around for a post show, and hopefully, if you wanted to talk about what we just discussed here with the code, if you want to talk about things we have different going on for season 3 or things that we plan on doing, it's pretty free form. So, feel free to jump in any way you want. But if you can hang around, that would be great. If you can't, I want to thank you very much for joining us for the start of season 3. And we'll see you next week, same time. Take care, everyone. Hello, welcome to the pre-show. So, thank you all for joining us for today's show. It was it was a lot of fun and a lot of work getting everything back up for this this new season. So we have a lot of changes, both in the production, with audio, with video. So there will be a lot, and we will do a show specifically on everything technically inside the studio that we've added for this. Uh, but I am told that we have a guest here. So John, I think, has joined us. So John, how are you?
I suppose it's right to say Happy New Year, everybody, isn't it? Really?
So yeah, I know we're kind of late into the new year, so it's but yes, so thank you. So we have Gary's just mentioning for multi PTZ camera setup. That's just something that we use. Gary, that's great. So thank you. So John, how are you? I know you've had a lot going on, so uh, if you'd like to share some of that, that would be great for everyone.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that we are escaping COVID now, and therefore there's a lot of organizations who've been surviving on Zoom and, yeah, using VMix and whatever, but now they want to go back to physical. So now the question is, what cameras can you get hold of? What equipment can you get a hold of? How are you going to connect it? So, yeah, talking about PTZ is just the best timing you could have.
Yeah, I mean, we figured that, what we're hearing is that there's there's a lot of interest now in sort of that hybrid, where there are people who, for a variety of reasons, actually found that it was really convenient to go, uh, you know, to sort of go virtually to some of these things, and there are others that really want the in-person experience. So I think what we're going to see is that mix, and it was one of the things, because the target model works really well for things like panels where you have people that are set up and you may turn around and say I've got one camera on this person and yeah, my preferred camera would be the same one, but I'll use another camera to get to the second person. You don't have to think of it. You just say I just have buttons with people's names on them and it can do that for you. So definitely get you into that space. But we thought the same thing, that this would probably be an interesting way uh, to get my feet wet again, because being 4 months away and not focusing on going live, know for a fact I'm pretty rusty with all this. But I also thought it would be interesting for folks that are really starting up and starting to do those types of live productions again. So, do you have a lot of live work coming up right now? Are you busy that way?
We're sort of in transition at the moment because most of the events happening in the next few weeks, the next couple of months, were organized when there was no chance of being face to face, so they're online. But we've had to up our game for the online because otherwise people are just bored, zoomed out and all that sort of thing. So we've used a lot more of Zoom and VMix. We've had well, we don't have your call-in feature that you use. I've not used the VMix call-in feature. I've actually used a second Zoom account. So all my speakers are in one Zoom account. So they're in like a virtual green room, and then I connect that into a second Zoom account, which has all the attendees, and therefore you can cut the two off and do the clever bits of mixing as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're definitely looking for um, I'm being asked all the time of how can I do a hybrid because it's let's face it, it's a much more expensive event when you go hybrid, especially when you want more than one camera, which of course they
Yeah.
do need, otherwise they'll be bored.
Yeah, I mean it's funny that I think the because of this transition, the demand for higher production quality is there, and everybody now has that Zoom experience. So that has worn its welcome out, and now if you're going to get paid to do something, there really needs to be some type of you know real value add that you're gonna layer into this, because we think that's something that for everybody they want to find a way to make that engaging again. And we all know, I mean, there's so many meetings you end up with where people just turn their cameras off, like, and it's like clearly they're not connecting, in a meaningful way with what's being presented. They don't feel that engagement. So I think your experience with Toastmasters is great because a lot of that focuses on all the different vectors for grabbing somebody and trying to pull them along some sort of narrative arc. And that's visual storytelling is a narrative arc, and it sort of goes with whatever production you have set up.
Yeah, Toastmasters is a good example because I have data on thousands of clubs around the world. And if you just take the 170 odd in my area in the south of the UK,
Yeah.
yeah, we've lost a lot of members, but half the people now who are members joined since COVID. So they've not known a physical room, and to them, it's a novelty.
Yep.
We have people who are refusing to do online meetings because they want the physical only. We've got other groups, like there's a group of doctors, which I do a lot of seminars for, and they've decided to stay online because the traveling costs and the time costs are not worth it for a 2 hour meeting for them to be trained. They'd rather do it from home. But yeah, they're turning their cameras off. I've got my mum sitting next to me in a hospital bed,
Yeah.
and if she makes a noise, then I have to attend to her. You wouldn't get those distractions if you're in a room. So yes, it's interesting. I've I splurged out on an Eldochrome
Oh, yep.
unit, which is a jib,
Yep. Where
and
you
they've
can
just
move and yep.
yeah, that's it. And the reason I went for that rather than a PTZ is because that can then have any camera mounted on it. I'm not limited to the PTZ camera. I can
Yep.
put any camera onto that jib. And fortunately, they had announced and they've now released a vision module, which is basically a module that allows you to track a person, and the camera will then follow the person around automatically for you.
Yes.
Which so you've got the ability to preset set movements with the jib,
Yep.
but you don't have to worry about focusing in on the person because the vision module can do it for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. Now I know that Bird Dog recently released that with their cam control, where you can now take one of their PTZ cameras, tell the external program track this person. You identify the person, and then it will do that sort of, for a lecture or, a religious service or something where you have one main subject that's going to be moving. It'll do that following. So all of those things are great, and it works great if you again you have to have your cutaway shots, you have to have reaction shots, you have all the sort of the whole language of visual communication needs to be there so people I know you need to see the big space. So I know I'm not just, this is not the space I'm in. So sometimes you need the wide shot. I need to see other people. So I know there's an audience and a reaction sense. So all those things. And that's, the vision mixer, from the UK nomenclature, it definitely has the responsibility of communicating all of that. And, you can't put anything on autopilot anymore. People really want to see the art come back into this.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're doing an event, it's not like a football match where you're allowed to be a camera wandering around.
Yeah.
When you're in an event like that, you've got to blend into the background, and therefore PTZ cameras set up is a great way of doing it. And then yeah, we haven't done away with the camera operator because, as you say, the camera operator now has just got a multi-camera discipline, has got to control multiple cameras at the same time, and as you say,
Yep.
prepare the next shot before you get there. And
Yeah, it's
it's
funny.
going to be an interesting challenge for a lot of people. It's going to be a move upwards and an upgrade in their knowledge and their skills.
But what's funny is if you see an actual production, like especially like a live event production, you will find that the best camera operators are actually getting shots. So they're sitting there saying, "I've got this shot," and they're giving the director. They're sort of seeing what the director's trying to do, and they're keying off of that to say, "I'm getting them shots that they can cut to." So it isn't the director directing everything. It's having that relationship with the camera operator. They sit there and go, "I know what he wants to do. I know what they want to do," and they sort of move in and get these different shots. So there's art in the entire process. So it's not just sort of like a director or the TD or whatever. None of, it's not one person, it's everybody sort of contributing to that whole, which is what's great when you work with teams. You get that sort of vibe that you feed off of each other with.
Yeah, and if people listening to this are starting to feel scared now that this is really, really complicated, Don't knock it, Mum. Indeed, she's got the right idea. Don't knock it. If they think it's really complicated, I can tell you that this is the old one-upmanship competition now.
Yep.
If you are doing a shot like the shot on me, and it's just me in this same position the whole time, people get bored. If you just do a couple of zoom in, zoom out versions of that shot, you suddenly got some variation.
Yep.
What I'm trying to say is there are small increments you can make in the way you design your shots, which keep the interest far longer than just one square, which is what you get in Zoom.
Yeah, and it's also there are so many other assets you can bring too. So it's not just the camera. When people talk about stuff, having collateral information, sort of visuals, small video clips that make points, as opposed to somebody simply using three paragraphs when you could show something in a 15-second video that would communicate that. You always have to think about what's the best way to get a message across, and it as you said, it isn't static, and it can't be something where the people producing it can get complacent. So I agree. I mean, in this case, it's a race to the top. I mean, during COVID, we sort of had our race to the bottom where everybody that was involved was sort of like, I'll just do a Zoom meeting and it's going to be, I'll blank out where, people on screen and pull them out. It's like, ugh. And now I think we're seeing the exact opposite happen. Now everybody's saying, okay, how do we up the game? And, competing for business now is going to require that you have those types of skills. And, it's multidisciplinary. So very cool on this front.
Yeah, and I'm being bombarded by telephone calls from all those organizations that pretended they could make events work, like, well, I won't mention any names.
No, but I
But the types, companies I mean, where they've created some organizational web page. That's all they've done. They've created an organization web page with a database behind it. Then they back into Zoom or some other streaming service, and they then charge 10, 15,000, well, 15, $20,000, convert it to US for you,
yeah.
for about 1,000 people turning up to an event. And we've obviously, Toastmasters have been bombarded by those types of organizations because we've got events all the time. And I was talking to one of our senior directors only today, and I said, do you remember about 4 years ago, before COVID, you used to organize this with a piece of paper and a spreadsheet? Why do you want to spend £10,000
Yeah.
to host an event that you used to do with a spreadsheet and a piece of paper and a few post-it notes?
Yep.
And you know, obviously, a lot of people are starting to think the same way because these companies are chasing us. And then if you take the bigger picture, Netflix is now finding it's losing money because we're out of lockdown now. We don't have to watch films 24/7. We can now have a real life, go outside, walk the dog, do real work, go to an office,
Talk with people. Yes.
talk with real people in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, but I understand you can do it,
Yeah.
and you don't even have to have a mask on.
So yeah. So no. So there's I think there's a lot of goodness going to come out of this. This transition we're making. I think we have seen the benefits from some of the online things, and we sort of understand it, but we also saw the downsides. And now we're going to sort of distill this into a new model. And in all cases, when you get a chance to do something new, it opens the door for people that are more creative, more innovative, and sort of faster on their feet to go and sort of say, hey, I've got a better idea for how to put something together. And like you said, it's all about engagement. Spending $10,000, if people are not paying attention, you're just wasting your money. Might as well just videotape a talk and put it up on YouTube and send people a link. Say, watch this when you get a chance, because you're not getting any more engagement than that.
Exactly, exactly.
So,
So I think it's going to be a great year, and I'm looking forward to what else you got planned.
so
Can you tease us with anything else?
yeah, I mean, from the show side, we're gonna actually start to do some stuff with around how do you engage with an audience, and so some interactive stuff. We want to do things that would basically do like quizzes and polls that you can do dynamically and pull that data in and display it on screen. So you can at any point sort of stop and say, okay, everybody, let's go on here and tell me which of these three you prefer. We just talked about three different technologies. Which one would you use for the and you can now create that next level of connect. And so this is something that we've already baked into our professional products, but from a as a part of streaming alchemy, this is something we want to sort of go through on a scripting level and let people start to engage with that. And we'll probably do something around that with sort of doing a game show and having different people engage that way. So it should be pretty interesting for that. And I think a lot of what we want to do this year is going to start to move outside of just VMix only, because I mean we love VMix, and that's not a, but we want to do things where you can actually manage code outside. So that's why we're looking at Node.js, and that will be a part of all of this because we think it lets you do more, it gives you more control, and it gives you more manageability. You can actually store these things as real programs that you manage in libraries and can pull in and modify and share and do things with it. And it also means you can work across multiple systems. So if you're working TriCast, you're working VMix, you're integrating VMix with any one of the other, so it could be Zoom, it could be any of the other sort of ways to have all these things interact, and it becomes seamless with a single interface. So that's really where the arc for what we want to do this year. But we're also going to do some lighter things. We're going to talk a lot about how you set up sessions in VMix, sort of work from the ground up. Take a blank session. How would you do different things you want? How would you set up green rooms? How would you set up multi-block shots and do merge transitions to sort of bump people out and do things that people visually are interested in seeing. So, not as it's not just going to be for sort of bit heads. It's also going to be for, hopefully talk to the creative side. And so that's really our plans for this season. We are very busy with the new program launch. So, we have, the 6 channel and 12 channel on the live tear side. So that's been getting that out the door is keeping us really busy. But, we're excited for what we have, on the business end of this as well. So a lot of good stuff planned for this year.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds fantastic.
So, John, thank you very much for taking the time to call in.
That's all right. Thanks for being here.
Oh, and best regards to your mom. Uh, I have an aging parent we care for here as well. So uh, I appreciate what's involved in that. So thank you for doing that. So
That's all right.
cheers.
Bye
Take
bye for
care.
now. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks. All right. So So I have. Thank you, John. That was great having you on. So I have. Say thank you for jumping in and saying hello to us. I appreciate that. I know that we've covered a lot of stuff in this one. So if anybody has any other questions, I definitely would like to jump on that now. Uh, it is definitely free to call again. So if anybody wants to jump on and join us that way, please we'll hang around for a few more minutes. But what I'd like to just mention now in closing is that uh, I'm going to be out at NAB next week, so I will be there Sunday through Wednesday. And uh, if you would like to meet, please just reach out. You can probably the best way to do is to just message me through Facebook, and that way we can set up anything we need to coordinate a meeting, or just I can let you know where I'll be at different times on different days, and hopefully if you're going to be there, we'll get the chance to meet. So uh, if there I'm not seeing any other questions here, but all right then. So I think we are going to call it a wrap for this week. Uh, I will, as I mentioned, be out at NAB, so I'll be collecting photos and cool product demos that I see out there. And for next week's show, that's what we'll be sharing with all of you. And If there's anything specific that you want us to go and take a look at while we're out there, please just message me, and I'll try to drop by whatever vendors booths you want it, and see what information I can get. All right then. Thank you, everybody. Excited to be back, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care, everyone.